perfect stream. Recording.
I just got some juice. I'm back on now. I'm gonna share it. Or I guess as soon as.
Yeah, we got time to do all of that. All right, I think we're good, bro.
Peace and blessings, family. This is Brother Shareef and Brother Ptah with the Hour of Power for another fantastic show. Definitely want to tune in and share. I'll do my opening universal prayer, and Brother Ptah has some announcements for some wonderful things coming up, and then we'll get into this much anticipated interview with our brother. In the name of God, the gracious, the merciful, we give him praise and thanks for his mercy and his goodness to the human family. If all the trees upon the earth were pens to write with, and if all the oceans were ink, and then another 7 oceans to add to its supply, the writing would still not be enough to explain the glory of God. We confide in no other in our time of need, and we praise no other in our good fortune. He is one. And even if I lived to be 1,000, it would still not be enough to thank God for his many blessings and gifts. We thank God for the Metu Neter, oracle scriptures and writings that came on the continent of Africa thousands of years before any organized religion. We thank God for Moses in the Torah, Jesus in the Gospel, and Muhammad with the Quran. I greet everyone in words of peace. To my Christian family, praise the Lord. To my Muslim family, assalamu alaikum. To my Hebrew Israelite family, shalom. To my Black conscious family, hotep. To my Native American family, halito. And to the people in the streets, what's good to you? It all means peace. I turn it over to my good brother, Ptah Shakur.
Grand Rising, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, and let everybody know this is the most powerful of all hours. This is the Hour of Power coming from York, PA, every Wednesday from 8 p.m. to 9 p.m. So if you're watching this on Channel 16 and Channel 18 there in the White Rose Community Television, you're in for a treat. If you're actually watching this via Facebook, you're in for an extended treat because if we're able to go over our extended limit of an hour on Facebook. So those that are watching that on the White Rose, make sure you get up on Facebook so you can get some exclusive information. So like he said, this is the Hour of Power broadcast. We want to hear from you. This is the program for the community. We want to hear about your successes. We want to hear about the youth. We believe the youth is our future. It's the hill that we will die on. We understand that the youth right now are some of the most powerful souls that are reincarnated at this particular time. And so we got to unlock their greatness. If you have a business proposition, business that you already have in development, or even a business plan, this is a place for you to come and help highlight that particular business. This is all for diversity. We want to hear from different viewpoints. We believe that in order for us to unify and grow together, that we all need to speak up and allow our perspective to be heard. So even if some of the information you hear on this particular broadcast may not be something that you're interested in, we want to hear from you on whatever you're interested in, regardless of whatever your political affiliation, whatever your acronyms or whatever letters you stand for. This is an open dialogue for individuals that would like to come on the program and actually speak. So like I said, this is all going on the White Rose Community Channel 16 and 18. Then it will be on YouTube as well. So keep eye out for that. But I just wanted to make a mere mention before we get into the interview with a great brother that we have here today is on Monday. Listen up. Monday, January 27th, between 3 p.m. to 7 p.m., we have the TMS Open House. Now, TMS is a gentleman that came about 2 episodes ago. A doctor came on. He was sharing about alternative treatments for anxiety, depression, and I'm trying to think what the other one was. However, this is a non-invasive type of procedure that's been proven to have wonderful results for individuals that are suffering from mental health issues. So a reminder, at the TMS Open House here in York, PA, if you have any questions, I'm going to put the information on the bottom of the Facebook link as well. You can reach out to Shareef or myself. Monday, January 27th, 3 p.m. to 7 p.m. Come check out the TMS Open House. So with that, I'll kick that.
The address.
The address, I will put that on the
1806 North George Street, right next to the CVS Pharmacy.
There we go. 1806 North George Street. Thank you very much, my good brother. So yeah, we'd like to see everybody there. So check us out. I'll kick it back to you, bro.
And I just want to give a quick shout out to my cousin Mike Penn, who passed away last week. My first cousin. So I pray that the Most High blesses his soul.
Rest in peace.
Without no further ado, introduce yourself, my brother.
Hello, everyone. In Yopa, really feel blessed and welcome to return to York, PA. My name is Benbruno Nkapbela, but my author's name is Rawi Akhbar Mpodol Ion. I'm the author of Ancestral Bloodlines, The Black Crown. It's a story and a narrative about my family's indigenous African traditions. We are Bamileke, so we originate from Cameroon, but before we came to Cameroon, we actually came from Egypt. So I'm gonna talk about our rituals, our ancestry, how my family particularly came to the United States and what that has to do with my book and Christianity, and try to wrap it all together.
Okay. What inspired you or led you to write such a book, if we want to say that? Ptah. Can you put that mic, the mic here?
Oh.
Yeah. There. Okay.
Yeah, so my daughter was really the biggest inspiration. She's turning 2 pretty soon in a couple months, and her name is Unity. Knowing that I was going to become a father and really be a man that was responsible for another person inspired me to make sure that my heritage and my culture was passed down, because my culture played a significant part in my life. And I wanted to make sure that she had that same privilege. I am an African American, but my parents are originally from Cameroon. And I think because I'm so close to my Cameroonian family, I have a lot of privilege that a lot of Africans and even a lot of African Americans here might not have, if they've been removed from their African roots, their village. And so I wanted to make sure that she could have some sort of structure, essentially like a Bible, to know, okay, these are the rituals that we perform. Oh, when someone dies, this is what we do. This is how we're going to celebrate them. This is how they become an ancestor. This is why we wear white. This is why we celebrate for days, to ensure that everyone goes back to the village. Everyone, rests together. And so I wanted to make sure that she had her indigenous religion. She had her language as well. I talk about the languages that we speak in our villages in Cameroon. The Bamileke, we speak many different languages. 5 or 6 different languages, but my parents come from 2 different villages where they both speak different languages. They speak Yemba, and they also speak Ngemba, and they're different. I would compare them to Dutch and German. The way that Dutch is similar to German, but it's a distinct language. That's how I would compare Yemba and Ngemba. And so making sure that my daughter had the tools that she needed to succeed and to retain her heritage. That was the inspiration behind this book. And also not just my daughter, but the future, African Americans, Africans. I didn't have a place. I couldn't just go on Google and just look up indigenous African religion. Now hopefully you will be able to.
Beautiful. It's very timely, man.
What does your daughter's name mean? Because that's very unique.
Unity is ancient Egyptian. It means the one to be the people's ruler.
Wow. Okay. Yeah, I know. In Islam, our name comes out to a short phrase that we're supposed to live by. So is it sort of the same
Yes.
thing? The ruler. That's deep.
Yes, it's a big responsibility, and specifically the Bamileke, our people. All of our names come from other people. That's how we remember our ancestors. My name, Benbruno Nkapbela. Ben, my father, Bernard. Bruno, my mom's twin brother, Nkapbela, after my great grandmother on my father's side, who only named my father Nkapbela, which means the money of the village in our language. So I wanted my daughter to have just as powerful a name that meant something, that she could even look at it and be like, oh, why give me an ancient Egyptian name? We're not Egyptian. Oh, but if you go back, we come from Egypt. We come from the Nile River. If you go back, we're not originally from Cameroon. The original people from Cameroon are the Pygmies. They're very distinct. We're not pygmies. And so you look at us, I want you to know where you come from and to be proud of it.
And I pretty much can speak for a lot of black people here in America. A lot of us can't go back any further than our grandparents. Some may not even know that. I think most of us do, but anything past our grandparents, most black people here in America can't go past their, their grandparents. I know I can't, and it was just something that just ain't discussed, whether they knew it or not. So something like this with the ancestors and knowing your bloodline, that is so important, because a lot of other ethnic groups can go 200-300 years back, and we just can't. I know I can't. Now I traced my bloodline, and it said I had some Cameroon and some Nigerian.
We're brothers.
Yeah.
We're brothers. Yeah, we're stronger together.
Yeah.
But now you can tap back into those ancestral roots. You can tap into that heritage that you and I both share. You can say, oh, because I'm Cameroonian, maybe we have some of the same ancestors. How do I call them the ancestors? What should I say? How can I feel them? What should I feel like?
Right. And even the way many of us term ourselves isn't historically correct. You notice I said black people in America. I didn't say African American, because African to me is life, freedom, justice, equality. American to me is the exact opposite.
I agree.
So how can you be from God and the devil at the same time?
It doesn't make sense. And then why do we not call whites European Americans? I feel like it's another way to divide us and to, just spread division within our community. So I don't like that terminology either. I just like to refer to us all as black. We're all brothers. We're all sisters. We're all related. We're all just a big family.
Well, that's something Jesse Jackson made up to make black people in America feel inclusive with the Democratic Party. You didn't hear no one using that before Jesse Jackson. Our slaves with the slave narratives didn't refer to us as African American. So that's something that Jesse Jackson made up to make us feel inclusive with the Democratic Party. No one ever referred to us as African Americans before that. So that's a made up term, and we just accepted it like we accept anything else. And then things that are ours, probably got 100 questions for you. But if you go to a doctor, no one asks for his license. No one asks, is he qualified to do surgery or whatever. But when it comes to us, you need all these credentials. So I'm willing to learn from what you have, and as much as you can, give it to us, man. We need this.
Yeah, absolutely. And I really like the fact that you brought up, how the definition and the meanings of words can get changed by other people. Like, I think of, I really appreciate, the name Ptah, and I think of the word pharaoh. I think of how the word pharaoh isn't even the word king in ancient Egyptian. The word for king in ancient Egyptian was news, and pharaoh is a bastardization of paroa, which means the one who sits in the big chair. Instead of calling the pharaoh a king, they just referred to him as the one who sits in the big chair, as opposed to using the Egyptian word, which is news. So I think that, how our stories are told, who's telling our stories, making sure that the people that are telling our stories represent us accurately.
Yes, sir.
That was also a big reason behind this book, because this book is partly a translation of this other book, Le Culte des Ancêtres chez Ningemba, written by the head priest of the Western region of Cameroon 40 years ago. He was assigned by the Pope in Italy to write a book about our indigenous religion so that he could better convert us into Christians. And so that is what this book is about. I discovered this book at the Princeton Library. There are very few copies in the world. I think only 16 copies in the world, and there were only about 5 in the United States. And the closest one to me was Princeton. So I went to Princeton, paid about $150, got into their archives, got myself a copy of this book, scanned the book, the entire book.
Library of Princeton. It's real talk.
Legit. And I cried when I went to their archives, because they had so much history, so much black history, all these tomes that were untouched. Ghanaian history, Central African history, Nigerian history, Cameroon, all these tomes just written by scholars, and no one had, even deigned to, like, oh, where can I find out like some of my original history? It was locked. It was locked away. Someone had done that homework, but they didn't share it, and so they locked it away, and it was also completely in French. Luckily, I can speak French and I can read and write French, but I needed to share it with my family, not just my family from Cameroon, my family in America, my people here. And so I translated it into English, and I found that it was inadequate because it was a dissertation, it was research. Yes, it needed cultural context. It needed to venerate our ancestors, our leaders, because it talks about the rituals to venerate our ancestors, but it doesn't talk about what our ancestors accomplished, who they were by name. Even my author's name, Mpodol Ion, is named after the forgotten father of Cameroon, Ruben Niobe, who was assassinated by the French, by France. And I wanted him to be remembered because his name was banned in Cameroon. It was illegal to say his name for 50 years. And so I want to make sure that all of our leaders, all of our ancestors, they can be properly remembered. They did amazing things. They went to war. They went to battle. They were kings. They were queens. When I discovered it, I felt so empowered. I was like, whoa, we're powerful. When I die, I'm gonna go back to the village. That's where I'm gonna be with them. They're gonna be there with me. And I just felt, just so privileged to be able to know this, and I wanted to share it so that my brothers and my sisters, they could also know, whoa, we're powerful. We come from royalty, like real royalty, real Egyptian royalty.
Yeah. Man, let me tell you just real quick, as I just jump in this a little bit, just being an individual who has worked with youth here in the inner city, you could just see somehow that them not knowing their history and knowing with the power that actually backs them, how greatly that is a detriment, to the youth. So that's always been something that's on my heart and mind, to make sure that they have that foundation to understand that you are the legacy of kings of really, really powerful people. So this is really, really timely, and I pretty much can relate to anybody who's listening right now here in York, PA, or all parts in between. This is a live call-in number, so you can feel free to call in to 717-846-5067. We got this powerful brother right here speaking about our ancestral bloodline and how important that is. My son actually did the online blood thing. What's it called? I don't know. 23andMe or something
that's what
like
I
that.
did. Yeah.
That's the only, just being a black man here in America, like we got straws that we kind of can grasp at to give us this type of foundation. So I can't wait to get into the book. This is some really, really powerful information. So thank you again for, divinely being set on this particular path for this. This is something I know a lot of people are going to eat up, and we're going to do our due diligence to make sure we share this with everybody.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate the comment about the youth and the importance of the youth knowing their history. It's inspiring. And what I've seen, I'm also a PD Green tutor, so I'll go to detention centers, I'll go to after-school programs with at-risk youth, and I'll teach them and I'll tutor them, mainly in science, but occasionally we'll get a history lesson, and I'll see what they're teaching them in terms of history about America. They don't even refer to slaves as slaves anymore. In the books that the students were reading, they were calling them field hands. This was in Philadelphia, and I was shocked. I was like, field hands? These guys were field hands? And so knowing, who your enemies are, knowing who historically has wronged you, and knowing what you need to do to get back on top. We used to build pyramids. What are we doing now? We used to build monuments that last for thousands of years. What are we doing now? Even as a community, I think, the youth and bringing us together, that should be the goal, because I look at other communities and I see how important they emphasize teaching their youth. I think of the Jewish community. I think of the Holocaust. I think of growing up, the same amount of time was spent learning about the Holocaust as it was learning about slavery. But then I look at how long the Holocaust lasted, and I look at how long slavery lasted. The Holocaust only lasted about 9 or 10 years. Slavery lasted for hundreds of years, and we're just talking about the Atlantic slave trade. We're not even talking about the Middle Eastern slave trade that ravaged Africa for thousands of years. So and that's not taught in school. So the history that we're learning isn't accurate. It's not correct. And the people that were taught to venerate, Thomas Jefferson, George Washington, those are the people.
All slave owners.
Slave owners that have a shameful history. I would be embarrassed to talk about them, but everyone I know can recite the Pledge of Allegiance by heart. They don't even have to think about it. And so I think that making sure that our youth have the same love and veneration for our people that they do for these slave owners, for these rapists, for these American heroes.
And they pick our heroes for us.
Yeah.
What is acceptable.
Yep.
Now, of course, we love Martin Luther King, but he isn't the only one that did anything, for us. What about a Malcolm X Day? What about a Frederick Douglass Day? We don't need America to set up our heroes and sheroes. We don't, but we still, with all this access to information in the palm of your hand. When I was studying back in the day, I had to go to a library to learn the truth. Now you can get the truth in the palm of your hand, but no one. We're more behind now with more information than we was with less access to information. So we really need to put our our history, which it goes way back. There's no beginning, no end. Yes, we need to teach our children and the adults. The children don't know because the adults don't know.
Yep.
So,
but name me some main points because you got a whole book that you would like us to know about the book and the importance of getting it.
Yeah, absolutely. I think one of the big things that I highlight in every chapter of my book is how Western society and Western religions actually copy our indigenous ancestral veneration practices that we were practicing essentially even before they came to Cameroon to colonize us. Our practices predate them. And so how I've seen Western society mimic ancestral veneration in terms of the holidays, in terms of remembering, specific people, in terms of celebrating specific events that happen. I see that so much of Western society and just religion is essentially copying, saints in particular, in Christianity. That model of saints, is very similar to the model of ancestral veneration that we have as Bamileke people. We venerate our ancestors. We make sure that they're remembered. We reuse their names. In fact, and we go back regularly when someone becomes an ancestor to make sure that we're celebrating them, that they're being remembered in the way that we want them to, that their memory is still living on. And so I think, looking at some of the similarities between Christianity and ancestral veneration, that would be a really good talking point. I think here in the preview, I think at the very last page, I bring up a pretty good point. Ancestral veneration is often depicted as something mystical, sometimes even demonic, and Western media contributing to an othering of African societies. This othering supports a colonial mindset, which has historically justified exploitation and cultural superiority. So by making ancestral veneration taboo, they've been able to essentially erase it and push it to the side, saying, no, you want to be Christian, you want to be Muslim because what you're practicing is evil, it's demonic. But what are they practicing? The same chants, the same religion you see in Pentecostal Christianity here in the United States. So what is really evil? Right. Who is defining the evilness? I think those are some of the points that we can talk about and address.
Yes, yeah. I was just getting ready to say that a lot of faiths, if you say anything about the ancestors, they make it seem like you're devil worshiping or something like that. But they remember their ancestors. The truth in that is when they have all these holidays, what do you call that? These men been dead for 200-300 years or whatever, and they make sure they ram it down your throat. Thomas Jefferson Day, Abraham Lincoln Day.
Discount on some furniture too.
Right. Columbus, he was a rapist and a couple other things, to say the least. And they have Columbus Day, Columbus University. Columbus Street. Every city in America has a Columbus Street. And he was nothing but one of the worst demons that we've ever seen. He introduced slavery to Queen Elizabeth. He said, we can take advantage of these people. And they moved in on him. Matter of fact, he when he went back on his first voyage here, and when he came, he brought criminals with him because no one was bold enough to or brave enough to see if the world was really flat. So he brought criminals with him. When he went back, the criminals told on him. The Queen Elizabeth said he wasn't looking to see if the world was flat. He was ravaging the children and the people over there. Do you know he was locked up? I have pictures of it. He was locked up when he went back on his first voyage. When he came back on his second voyage, he brought wild dogs with him to ravage the islands. He never came to America. That's a complete lie. Yeah. Columbus never came to America. He only went to the islands, and he ravaged the islands with disease and wild dogs ripping the people apart. But he has a holiday every year. And our children take off for someone who ravaged your ancestors. What kind of sense does that make? So the truth needs to be told, and if we don't tell it, it'll never be told because they're trying to bury our history. The school here, remember Ptah, they got in trouble, well, not in trouble, but Central School District had a list of books of not to read. Mm-hmm. That was just about 2 years ago. Yep.
And the youth they stood up against that. Shout out to the Central York.
School, yeah. You had a list of books of not to read, all African books.
They're not going for that.
Wow.
Yeah, or anything that would wake us up.
Right.
You know.
Spread some sort of consciousness. And that's why I also emphasize the different languages that we speak. And I make sure that when I refer to chants that we use, they're in our language. Because I think that the language that you use is definitely, it's going to determine how you think. It's going to determine not only how you think, the way that you think, and the way that you process information. That's why I wanted this book to be in different languages. I want it to be accessible to multiple people, no matter, where you are. But I also want to ensure that no matter what language it is, you're going to respect our language. You're going to know that when we think of our ancestors, we think of them in a language that they can understand. Because they weren't speaking English. They weren't speaking French. Right. They were speaking our tongue. They're speaking Yemba. They're speaking Nyemba. And so the language that we speak, we don't even process things the same way that we process things in English. In English and French, everything is very linear. You guys told me to be here at 8 p.m. We want people to, be here and listen for an hour. In Yemba, we wouldn't even say that. We would say the show is going to start when the chief arrives.
Okay.
Yeah, everything is based off of social status. Our time moves based off of society.
Yes, sir.
And also the natural flow of things. We'll start once it gets dark. We'll get breakfast when the sun rises. So we do things based off of not regular time but natural time. The societal time that we think is best for us. And so that not only determines not only how we think, but also how we act. You see Africans late to occasions, late to parties. Like, oh, man, on CP time, they're always late. No, they think differently. They have a different culture. And so because of that, they are going to move differently. You go to Germany, everything they are uptight. They are on time. That's their culture. You go to a different place, it's going to be a different culture. And the culture of Africans, I don't think has been properly recognized because they're not looking into the psychology behind their language. Mm-hmm. If you knew how these people thought because you could understand how they were speaking, you'd be like, oh, it's not that he's late. This is how they act because of their culture. This is normal for them. So how can I respect their culture and adjust to it so that I'm not forcing him to be more American or this African person, there's something wrong with them. They never show up. They're always late. So I think, a lot of these misconceptions, I think even before we started the show, I was like, I smell Africa. I was smelling those spices. I was like, are you hanging out with African people? I was like, because I know our fragrances, our spices, they're so pungent. I'm like, oh yeah, I love it. I love it so much. But it makes me think as a child, the children recognized it. They knew. They're like, Ben, look, you're different. I was like, what do you mean I'm different? They're like, bro, you smell different. You sound different. You're different from us. I was like, how am I different? I was looking at me. I was like, we're all black. How am I different from you? And they were just like, that's it, bro. That you just said it right there, bro. We didn't even say the same thing the same way. You said it different than me, and that's how I know. Hey, you smell different, you sound different, bro. You're not the same as me. And so, growing up, blacks here made it very clear that I was different from them, and I want my book to make that clear that we're not different. We share the same ancestors. We can share the same practices. We can practice them together because, in fact, in our community, when we have rituals, when people die, everyone comes together. The community comes together. You know, our ancestors are buried together. You know, it doesn't matter if you're from my family. If we're from the same village, you know, we're gonna be together as a village. And the village exists outside of just a place. It's also a symbol in our minds. Anyone who grows up in the community, the village is kind of like not just a home, but also like a policing figure. Oh, I'm gonna send you back to the village if you're acting up, but also you want to go to the village so you can be with all your family, you know. Right. And so the village exists in all of our minds, even though it's a place. And so I feel like it's also a safe area for us to be African, to be, you know, really who we are in our natural setting. Mm-hmm. And I feel like if African Americans and people, blacks here in the United States, could have that same sense of home that I've seen and felt within my community, you know, running around with all my cousins, you know, then going home and eating late, eat real late, like around that now, you know, eat a big dinner with all my cousins, you know, and feel like a family, feel like, oh, my cousins, yo, they're gonna go to bed, but you know, tomorrow we're gonna play together because we're a family. These cousins, you know, I'm gonna be, you know, they're gonna be with me my whole life, and that's still how I feel. I still feel like the family that I was raised with, that's my family. Like they're always gonna be there with me, and I don't see that in American culture. It really makes me sad, and I understand how much of a privilege that it is. So that's why I want to share the privilege that I have. You know, I've been given these privileges. Why should I keep them to myself?
I want. Do you have something?
Yeah, just real quick. I had a conversation with shout out to Dave Overton out there. We're gonna get you on the program as well. He's I believe he's a pastor, preacher. I'm sorry if I don't pronounce it just right, but we were speaking about the being in America as a black individual. We're asked to integrate into other type of things. You know, he was talking about segregation and integrate, but it's like this type of knowledge as far as our history and our ancestors and the remembrance of. We need to mix this into us. We need to integrate with this particular information. You see how we integrate within the music now. We got the Nicki Minaj, got the fake eyelashes and the blonde hair and all that. We always find a way to integrate our culture, and they end up taking our music, or way we dance, the way we talk, the way everything from us. But what we're have to pick from is what we integrate or mix up with is always something that taints us or takes us away from our original form. But to get this particular information from our ancestors back, we all need to double back. Go back and integrate back with something that is meant for us in our nature.
Yeah, we need to gatekeep it. When I see a black person now, I say we're stronger together. And sometimes they laugh. They're like, "What?" I'm like, "We're stronger together." What you mean? You look at me, look at you. Together we're strong. You know, it's not that there aren't enough of us. It's just that we're disorganized.
Yes.
You know, and so I don't say that to everyone I meet. I don't say that when I meet white people. I don't say that when I meet Asian people. I don't say that when I meet Jewish people. There's nothing against them. It's not like I don't like them, but they're not my brothers. I'm not stronger with them. We might be stronger as a collective, but my goals are for the black community. I want the black community to come up. I want them to remember their history. I want them to be powerful. I want them to be strong. And I don't need those other communities to do that. I can recognize them and acknowledge them, but again, you know, I know who my enemies are and I know who my allies are. You know, my allies are my brothers and my sisters. Mm-hmm. And so ensuring that, you know, this information gets to them, you know, and other ethnicities, other, you know, nationalities, they should be interested in it. They should be interested in other cultures, right. You know, but I need people to know that this is for my black brothers and sisters. This is for our little girls. This is for our little boys. This is for our adults who are like, yo, I need some sort of spiritual system, but, you know, I'm not really aligned with the systems that I'm hearing about. Read this book. Mm-hmm. You're gonna find out more about yourself and things that you might align with, and you can say, oh, okay, I'm gonna practice this. I'm gonna go back to chapter 3. I'm gonna read about the rituals. I'm gonna actually try this ritual. I'm gonna see how I feel. So that
One thing I wanted your view or opinion on, and this bothers me to my soul, always has. Why is it that Africans that come here to America don't socially blend for the most part with black Americans? We look at each other and it's both sides' fault. It's not one or the other's all fault. It's both sides. You got Africans come here. I first noticed it when I was a teenager and I worked at the hospital. They come here and they almost look down on us. And then brothers said something about they showed videos of how savage we are before they get their green card. And that's why, quote unquote, Africans don't want nothing to do with black Americans. But we don't socially mix. If you guys aren't, not you guys, but if our African brothers and sisters aren't braiding our hair or selling us some body butter, when do you see black Americans and Africans mix? They don't.
And
why is that?
I think that the reason, I don't know if it goes back to the videos, although I'd be interested to see those videos. It goes into the infrastructure that they see once they get here. Again, let me look at another community. Let's look at the Indian community. Let's say I have like a cousin. I'm Indian. I have a cousin who wants to come here from India. And once he gets here, I'm going to have a job lined up. He could work at my gas station. I'm going to give him a cell phone. He could live in my basement. He could live with my cousin, one of my relatives. So these other communities, the Asian community, the Indian community, the Jewish community, they have infrastructure established. They can come here from other places, plug in, speak the language, get access to a phone, to papers, documentation, start making money. The black community doesn't have that. My parents came from Cameroon. They struggled as immigrants. Why? They couldn't speak English. And then second of all, the blacks that were here did not see them as the same.
Weren't welcoming.
They weren't welcoming, and they didn't have, most importantly, they didn't have economic systems that they could tap into to immediately capitalize on their skills, start making money together. Other ethnicities see immigrants as an opportunity. Oh, there's gonna be people coming in here. They're gonna need to spend money. They're gonna need somewhere to sleep. So they're gonna need to rent somewhere. They're gonna need to get established. They're gonna make money off of that. The black community says, "Oh, what are you doing moving in here? Where are you from? I don't know you. What are you gonna do in my neighborhood?
You ain't my brother."
Exactly. And so they're not establishing economic systems that their brothers and sisters abroad can tap into. And then on top of that, they have these stereotypes, these mentalities I mentioned as a kid. Even the children knew I was different, even though I was speaking English. I was speaking perfect English. That's what my parents wanted me to speak. That's why I speak this way, And so I'm speaking English. I'm like, what are you talking? Like, I'm not even at home. Like, I'm not even speaking. Like what do you mean? We're the same.
It's like Malcolm said, the media is the most powerful entity on this planet. It can make your friend seem like your enemy and your enemy seem like your friend. Let me tell you something real quick about the brainwashing. Yes, I got this crazy ass aunt, right? Okay. And she used to date an African man. One time they got into a argument, and he called her everything but a child of God, even called her B. She was like, yeah, whatever. And he said, why? And then the African brother said, why are we acting like this? You're African like me. She said, oh, it is on now. You don't call me no African. Took off her earrings. Yeah. And when he called her a B, she was like, yeah, whatever. But when he said, you're my African sister, she said, what did you call me? She said, oh no, it's on now. She was ready to go to war because he called her African. That's how brainwashed we are. Yeah. And it's brainwashing both ways. I believe they are shown videos of how savage we are. Then they come over supposedly savage. And then when they see videos, and then they see us acting like what the stereotype was, but, okay, it's almost like the police. I knew it. So it's a lot of brainwashing, and I don't know how to get past that.
We used to call African booty scratcher.
Right.
That was I was bullied. That's what they would call me. They'd be like,
what is that? Where did we get that from? You know what I mean?
Spear chucker, African booty scratcher.
It's just savage. flies all over
eating
children.
Flies, playing in dirt, drinking brown water. And so I think it goes back to what I mentioned earlier.
Beautiful cities in Africa, as you know, make our best city look shameless.
For sure.
Yep.
We're not shown that. We're just shown the bad part.
But then the ancient Egyptian word for king was news. You look at how important media is. I think of the word.
That's deep. How you spell that? Real quick.
News, News.
Just the
Yes. And I think of how powerful media is. Marijuana is a made up word. All cannabis comes from China, but people think marijuana comes from Mexico because that's what they intended when they made up the word. They're like, we need a Mexican sounding word. We're gonna say the blacks and the Hispanics are raping white women. Marijuana, jungle fever. All of that was propaganda. All of that was propagated through the media. You can still find those media clippings, those newspaper clippings. But that's what people believe because people still use the word marijuana, So I see
how
how
don't know about the beautiful places. Can you talk about that? The beautiful places in Africa, like not Costa Rica, but the Gold Coast,
yes.
Ivory Coast,
Mali.
All that. You don't never see that.
Yes. But why would you? Because I think they want Africa to be portrayed as a poor, as a backwards country, as a place where there's no history before colonialization. Because if there's no history before colonialization, what's there to learn about? Just go there, get your money, get your resources, and leave. And that's what they've been doing. But if you take the time to think, okay, what was here before? What were they doing? How did they even get to this point? You're gonna start to ask questions. You're gonna start to find the ruins. You're gonna find the Great Wall of Benin, which was longer than the Great Wall of China. Where is it now? Ruins. It's in ruins. Great Zimbabwe. Great Zimbabwe was a wonderful city, huge city. And I was learning about this stuff when I was writing my book because I was doing history on all of Africa. I wanted to make sure all of Africa's included. It has Bamileke history. It focuses on Cameroon and the Bamileke, but I talk about all of Africa because our journey wasn't a short one. We came from Sudan essentially in the 9th century. And it wasn't quick. It was over hundreds of years that we made our way essentially from the east coast of Africa to the west coast of Africa. What were we doing in the meantime? What was happening? And so those are the things I wanted to talk about because I think they're important to share. For sure.
I just want to hop in. This is a live call-in show. The comments are blowing up on Facebook. We're going to try to get to some of those questions and comments on Facebook. But if you want to go ahead and call in and just jump to the front of the line, you can give a call to 717-846-5067. I'm just going to read this real briefly. This is a wonderful book called Ancestral Bloodline, The Black Crown. The Black Crown represents an exploration of African heritage, spirituality, and the resilience of cultural identity through a powerful narrative lens, rooted in the ancestral traditions of the, how you say that? Bamileke people of Cameroon. The story blends history, spirituality, and personal discovery, challenging readers to consider the complex legacy of colonialism and the ongoing struggle to reclaim cultural heritage. This book right here, folks, delves into the spiritual practices, societal structures, and political dynamics that shape African identity, connecting ancient traditions with contemporary challenges. So I just wanted to kind of read that. Make sure you get this book. I'm going to be going through it page by page, absorbing this very, very high, powerful information. I just want to kind of jump in and say that.
No doubt. And more, I'm sure you brothers can attest to this, more brainwashing is even with geography. They make Africa seem smaller than what it is. This is it's not a country, it's a continent with 54 countries within it. It's not no small little country. All the natural resources is there. They're minerally rich and economically poor because of European and Arab invasion. So, but geography-wise, they try to make Egypt something separate because that's where Jesus was supposedly born. They try to make it separate from Africa. No, Jesus was an African because he was born on the continent of Africa. Right. And then they make up this thing called the Middle East.
Change the maps all the time.
Yeah, there's no such thing as the Middle East because if it's the Middle East, then where's the Middle West? In the Middle North? In the Middle South? They just make it seem like these religiously profound places are separate from Africa. Ain't nothing. Egypt, there's a man-made canal with the water there that separates Egypt from Africa. That's it. It's a man-made ditch. But it's part of Africa. All the spiritual people that you read of in your Bible was born on the continent of Africa. You never hear preachers hardly talk about that. They make it seem like they were born in Europe. Wasn't no prophet born in Europe. They were all born in Africa.
They don't mention the name of the Pharaoh when they talk about Moses. They never mention the name of the Pharaoh when they tell the story of Exodus. That's something I've always found really interesting, and it goes back to our ancestors, our kings. King Ramses, that was the king. Mm-hmm. But they never discuss it. And
King Tut.
Yeah. And I think
thought it was Akhenaten. Was it Ramses or Akhenaten?
Both.
Yeah.
King Tut was the son of Akhenaten. Akhenaten is King Tut's father.
Okay.
Yeah. When he's on there like this. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Akhenaten is King Tut's father.
Mm. And going back to what you were saying about the essentially the identity associated with Africans and looking at it, I think an interesting point that I bring up in my book is the history of Liberia. Liberia was an African country started as an American colony. So the people who are inhabiting present-day Liberia are descendants of Black Americans. The majority of them, if you look at the population in Liberia now, only a small percentage actually speaks the indigenous language, is actually part of the indigenous people that were originally occupying the land known as Liberia. And I look at how Liberians act when they come to America. Their identity is ironic to me because they have an African identity and they see African Americans the same way Africans see African Americans. Mm-hmm. But then I'm like, wait, aren't you also African American?
Interesting.
Mm-hmm. Do you even speak Cree? Do you know? And Cree is the language that they speak there. I'm like, you don't speak Cree. You don't know the meaning of your name because you don't know what it means. You don't know your language. Over there, you're still using the dollar, and you're basically living an American life. And then you come here and you look at the Americans as privileged or as different. How are they? And that's what I've always found to be ironic. And when I ask Liberians, I'm like, so tell me, like, are you like, tell me about, some of your background. Tell me, do you speak Cree? Tell me about your family. Tell me about, your village. And they'll be like, honestly, I don't really know. I don't even, and I'll be like, you don't know. Mm-hmm. Well, do you know about the history of your country? Because what I've learned has been very eye-opening. Even though, we have the same perspective, I don't think we should. I think you should have a very different perspective from me. And a lot of them just don't even know it. A lot of Liberians don't know about the history. A lot of Liberians. But it makes sense when you look at the textbooks. You look at the modern-day textbook. You look at the president of Liberia. You look at the past presidents of Liberia. In the textbooks, they look white, even though they were black. They were black men in Africa. And then you look at the textbooks. The pictures of them actually look white. They've whitewashed the dead presidents of Liberia to make them look white. And I'm like, oh, of course you guys don't know your history. It's been whitewashed.
Right. And even going what you were saying about religion, about Ethiopia. The Ethiopian Bible, it has the largest amount of books in the Bible and some of the oldest books. And we spoke on this program before that even in Russia and Putin, he opened up the archives of some of these older books that he kept in his archive. And what you'll see is you'll see the Black Jesus, you see the Black Gospels. Everything is clearly put into, on the papyrus or on the whatever media there is. And so when you start from there and then you look at what we're getting fed today, you can totally see the whitewashing thing. It's very evident. All you got to do is do a little bit of research.
But then who owns the material? Who owns the distribution centers? Who owns the publishing companies?
True.
That's why I published independently, because I wanted to make sure that my message wasn't diluted. It wasn't changed in a way that I wouldn't feel comfortable recognizing and be like, oh, wait, no, this doesn't even mean that. Why are they representing it that way? I wanted to make sure that it was all still represented in a way that emphasized Black unity and Black heritage.
We're going to do what we can to make sure this is number one on the what is the book
New York Times.
New York Times bestseller. We gotta do
Yeah.
our due diligence to make sure we eventually get this to be the bestseller on New York Times.
I think that I've heard that list is just a lie. It's all about who you pay, and they'll put you on the list for real.
Now you got to research into that. Now.
But that's how everything works. You pay the right people, your name will get out there. You'll be shaking hands with the influencers. You'll be, doing that. But I just really appreciate all the love that I get from York, Pennsylvania. I'm always so shocked. I'm like, wow, thank you so much. I was a kid when I came here. I was an undergrad.
It's a special place here, man.
And it has a special place in my heart. That's why I stayed after. After I graduated, I was like, I want my company here. I want to give back. This city has given me so much. Just this random kid, And they're like, nah, bro, we'll give you a chance. So really appreciate the opportunity. Really appreciate the love and support. Thank you so much. Just want to emphasize that.
Well, I do got some questions. Before we leave, I want to know where you can find the book and all the socials and things. But you had another question, Shareef?
No, I was just going to reiterate the point. I remember I was in school and we had to write a paper on those who get to tell the story is the real winners. And I was like, what do you mean by that? But the more research you do, if you tell the story, you can tell whatever story that you want and people will believe it, So
his story.
His story, yeah. And the importance of Ethiopia, that's a whole nother topic. In Haiti, the doctor we had on the show the other week, he's from Haiti. America hates Haiti because of the revolution, and they showed them in Ethiopia showed the blueprint of freedom for African nations.
Yeah, Henry Christophe, Dessalines,
Haile Selassie,
yes.
What's his name? Toussaint Louverture.
Yeah, Toussaint.
Yeah, John Jacques Dessalines.
Yeah, Dessalines.
You ask the average Black American again those names, they would have no clue.
I talk about them. If they read my book, I talk about them. I talk about Black heroes. I talk about Black.
You do?
Yeah, I talk about Black revolutionaries. That's why I was doing all this research. I was like, okay. It's nice to have my heritage here, but I want this to reach all Blacks. I want all of our heroes to be remembered. We were powerful, so talking about those things, talking about Ptah, talking about the Shabaka stone, talking about...
Teach me some things about Ptah.
King Shabaka. King Shabaka is the reason why we know about the Ptah. King Shabaka was a Nubian king who conquered Egypt. When the Nubians conquered Egypt, Egypt was weak. Egypt had been conquered by the Greeks, the Persians, the Romans, and so when the Nubians rose up and conquered Egypt, that it was weak. It was because they had already been plundered by all these other groups. And so the king of the Nubians, when he was the king of Egypt, King Shabaka, he decided that he wanted to do things differently. He said that he wanted to make things better. And so he found a relic, essentially a scroll that described Ptah. And when he said he wanted to make it better, he felt like it was his birthright to codify it and turn it into a stele, something that couldn't be destroyed and something that would withstand the passage of time. And he made a stele. It's called the Shabaka stele, the Shabaka stone. And it tells the story of Ptah. Tells how Ptah made the world with words. And that's the Shabaka stone. And when I learned about that, I was like, wow, that was his birthright, to make sure that his ancestry was remembered, that it was preserved, really preserved, not just on paper, not just on papyrus, but on stone forever, like the hieroglyphics. I was just like, that's powerful. That's what this needs to be remembered, so that it can't be changed. You can't go over and be like, actually, let's interpret it this way. So I think King Shabaka, and I write about King Shabaka because he inspired me. I was like, people need to know about the Shabaka stone. People need to know about the Nubian king. People need to know about all of the African kings, the African revolutionaries. Those are the ancestors. Toussaint, Dessalines. Those are the men, and even the women that we need to remember. So.
I mean, we're the only ethnic group that has entertainers and athletes as our leaders. Look, in any other ethnic group, they don't have entertainers and singers and basketball players and football players as their leaders. They have real men and women that lead. The Black people in America are the only people that have entertainers and people buffooning and clowning as their leaders. And look at what they're promoting now. Disrespecting our women.
Violence. I think the
Sexuality.
I think that the preoccupation with violence within the black community comes from living in a post-colonial system where they're still experiencing the effects of slavery and colonialism. But I think that because we don't own the narrative, because we don't own the studios,
What we said earlier.
whoever
gets to tell the story.
They can't share their feelings through a medium that would represent them accurately. Instead, we see buffoons, we see clowns acting. We don't see the real problems in the black community that those stories would tell, and hopefully allow the people who witness them to address properly.
They glamorize it. Power and what's those other TV shows they used to have? Power and all dysfunction. They put the most dysfunctional people out in front of us.
like
Even
little kids
Tupac
now
and Biggie
like-
used to talk about their dysfunctional.
Fight publicly.
Yeah,
Grown man.
that's what they sell. That's what they sell to us: dysfunctionality, broken relationships, drug dealers, womanizers. This is what they put in front of us, and then we're giving it to our children. These shows. What's that one show? I think it's called Greenleaf or something. Now, it's supposed to be a Christian show, and all they do is talk about womanizing, drug dealing, who's cheating on each other. It used to be on
Perry type stuff.
Yeah, and they had one show called Greenleaf.
Kind of heard it.
Yeah, it's a church of how it's a show of how dysfunctional the church is. Nothing but dysfunctionality. The Christian religion ought to be ashamed of that show, but they glamorize it. Tyler Perry and Oprah and gay people and all that. And I don't got nothing against that, but we have to speak the truth. That we're not going to reproduce if we have that kind of lifestyle. I don't hate the person. I don't like the lifestyle. Straight up. You heard it first on Hour of Power, and I ain't afraid to say it.
And even with the youth now, it's so drama thinking, drama driven. Like, and like I said, working with youth, I'm talking about as young as maybe 5 or 6 years old. They just get a entertainment out of that whole like Mean Girls type thing. That type of deliberately want to replay these images that they get seen on the screen. And
why wouldn't you? If you see something, why wouldn't you want to see? Oh, I could do that too. And that's why the stories are so powerful. Oh, I heard of this. You think we could do this too? Yo, that's all. Like, oh, yo, we did this. We were building these great monuments. Yeah. Yo, y'all think we could do this too? Y'all think we could get together? We could, recover our history. We could recover our rituals. We could be proud of our heritage, our ancestry. I hope so. That's the goal.
I do want to mention that right at 9 o'clock, we will be cutting off of the White Rose Community Television stream. Make sure you stay tuned for us next Wednesday from 8 p.m. to 9 p.m. with another powerful guest as well. Those that are watching on Facebook, we're going to keep going. I'm going to read a few of these wonderful comments that we have. Taisha Jones said, it's a gene that only the black woman has, so the black women are humanity. The first man on earth was black. Everybody's really kind of vibing with. They're talking about the revolutionary movement of Toussaint
Louverture.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so we got that on there. We do got a question. Gito, I believe, put that on there. He asked about what's your thoughts about like the emerald tablets? You heard about the emerald tablets, or okay?
We have to look that up.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
Yeah, I'm familiar with a little bit of emerald tablets. Something like from Thoth, the Atlantean, Kemet. Billy Carson kind of speaks about that, but everybody's really enjoying the program right now. And someone that said they heard your accent and asked where you're from, so they heard you got perfect English.
Yeah.
But somehow they found a way to get the accent. So I responded in Cameroon. Is it a particular spot in Cameroon? Is it kind of narrowed down?
Western Cameroon. My accent, I always feel like, to answer the original question, I feel like my accent, it'll change, because when I speak French, if someone hears me speaking French, they'd be like, oh, like that's not African French. That's not Cameroonian French. You're speaking like French. You're speaking like a different like a proper French, and
school French or like street French.
Exactly. And so the way that I speak, like, I feel like an outsider no matter what culture I'm in, because it's so proper, because I'm so like,
I got you.
I feel I just feel like an outsider. Like Cameroonian men, they're normally clean shaven. They don't have beards. They don't have tattoos. They have short hair. And then black men in America, I don't speak like them. I don't even dress like them. So I feel like no matter what culture I go to, I'm an outsider. So the question, where are you from, has always been, I'm like, be more specific. Where were you born? Where were you raised? Because when I think where are you from, I think where my ancestors buried. My ancestors are all buried in Cameroon. That's where I'm from. That's where I'm gonna be. That's where I'm gonna die. That's where the thing looking over me is gonna be my ancestors. I'm not gonna have a tombstone. I'm gonna be there with my ancestors. They're gonna take my skull. They're gonna take and put my skull with the rest of my ancestors. So I'd say my accent is just it's proper. It's I could fake the accent if I want. I could sound like this, and even when sometimes I'm speaking French, if I'm speaking French to someone who's African, peut-être je peux parler comme ça. Sometimes maybe I'll speak like this so that I'll change the tone of my voice. It's just code switching so that people feel more comfortable, because I understand that people feel more comfortable when they're hearing people that look like them, sound like them, and I understand that when I speak, I'm 100% outsider. People are like, oh, this proper guy came up to me and started talking about X, Y, Z, and I don't always want that. If I want people to empathize and relate, so I'll change how I speak and I'll go to their level. I'll be like, okay, this might not be how I sound, but this is how you sound. So maybe you'll feel more comfortable.
Well, you kind of make something pop in my head. You were talking about the veneration practices. What will be a practice just if someone was to pass away, or someone in the village or whatever? What was some? And you did mention about, I think, colors. What would be a day in the life, so to speak, in Cameroon when somebody would pass? Like, what was some of the key things that you would experience?
Yeah,
or not experience in this society?
The funeral ritual. And the funeral ritual will change depending on how that person will live their life. Are they going to become an ancestor? There are requirements to become an ancestor. Yeah, if you want to be remembered, you got to accomplish things in life. You got to be someone that we're going to be
put in some work.
Yeah, you got to be someone we're going to be proud of. You got to also have people to remember you. You got to have descendants. You got to have descendants that are going to carry on your legacy. You got to have accomplished great things for your community, so that when people speak of you, they can speak of these great things. They're not gonna be ashamed.
So it's different between
And there are different ways to die. Yeah, they're different, and that's what I talk about in my book, because they see death differently. Our view on death is just completely different. Depending on how you die, even if you die in a shameful way, by suicide, or like, let's just say you were doing something dishonorable. We're not going to honor your death. You died a dishonorable death. We are not going to honor you. Okay. And so, but let's say someone honorable died, and an elder, someone we want to remember. Yeah. We would take their body back to Cameroon. We take them back to the village. In terms of what we're wearing our indigenous clothing. We'd be wearing, specifically like very bright colored clothing. We'd all be wearing very similar clothing too. Whether it's like blue, whether it's white, whether it's green, we're all going to be wearing it. And we're going to go through specific ceremonies to make sure that this person is going around the village. We're celebrating them. We're talking about their life in our language. So that the ancestors know who's gonna come meet them, so like that their son or their daughter is coming back, they're returning.
So you would go around the village with the individual body, or just be in one location and individuals would come?
So this ceremony is gonna take days. It's gonna take several days. It's gonna take several days. It's gonna be a celebration for several days. Maybe even weeks. Depending on how important this person was. If this was the chief of the village, the ceremony might go on for weeks. And so going around the village, being in specific places in the village, going to the chief's hut, going to specific sacred sites, and making sure that they're performing rituals, going to essentially where they would keep the skull of that deceased person, because once they die, the skull is so important. It's all about the skulls. Okay. I remember reading an excerpt. There was a Mali king who had killed a European colonizer that come in to that essentially, just come in and take his gold. Come in and take his gold. They killed him, took his skull, plated it in gold, turned it into a cup. I always thought that was very iconic and powerful. The King of Mali turning his enemies into their skulls into a gold cup to drink out of, because skulls are so important. That's where we store all of our knowledge, all of our information, and in Cameroon, in our village, all of the skulls of our ancestors, they're all kept. Even a little piece of their hair too, but they're all saved in a specific place. So making sure that their body goes through not only the rites, but then they're also laid to rest with everyone else. That'll take weeks, and we'll be celebrating. We'll be eating good food together as a family. We'll be eating soya. Soya is a food that we eat only during special occasions. So we'll be eating soya. We'll be just preparing all of our traditions and making sure that they're remembered, the culture is shared, and they'll do it regularly. So this won't just be a celebration that happens once when they die. They'll go back again the next year and then the next year to keep celebrating and remembering this ancestor. To make sure that and then even name someone after them. Make sure that the names passing things down. So, and that's why it's important to have descendants.
One significant thing, well, not one, but one of the most significant and powerful things you said earlier was knowing where we're from. I think a big mistake that a lot of black people in America make, just because you're born somewhere doesn't signify who you are. How do we know that? Let's say a pregnant woman is on a plane and she's going on her destination, and they have to make an emergency stop in the middle of nowhere so she can have her baby. Does that mean that her baby is from the middle of nowhere? No. No, she's still going to be a French lady or an Italian lady or something like that.
Whatever.
Yeah, so where you are, like we this isn't our home. You know what I mean? You may have been born here, but this isn't our home. Our home is Africa, if you're talking about black people in America. Yep. But again, because we've been brainwashed so much, we don't want to signify that I'm African American. Doesn't, like I said earlier, that doesn't even make any sense when you look at the definition and what Africa stands for and what America stands for. You can't be from God, which is Africa, and the devil at the same time, which is America. That's their history.
Yep.
Stealing, theft, robbery, rape. So you can't be both. So we need to do what we can to connect to home.
And from what I recall, that landmass was referred to as Alcubon. I might be pronouncing it incorrect. Is there a term to describe the entire continent?
Bilad al-Sudan.
All right.
The land of the blacks in Arabic.
I think I heard that before.
Bilad al-Sudan.
Kemet is also the land of the blacks too.
Yes, Kemet is the land of the blacks.
What is that? Bilan al-Sudan?
Bilad.
Okay, I'll spell it. I'll ask you for the spelling later. I ain't gonna hold everybody up for that, but powerful.
Yes, this is want to tell us how now? Want to tell us again how to get your book?
You can
or is it not available yet?
So the pre-order is available. It'll be available next week. The release date is February 1st. You can get it on Amazon. You can get it at Barnes and Nobles. Today I came today to York. I stopped at a bunch of the local bookstores. So if things go well, if you're in York, hopefully you'll be able to get it at Bound and Books A Million as well. So those are the places you can get it. But you can also get it online. There'll be an audio version as well. If you're not a reader, there'll be an audio book, so you can just listen to it in the car while you're driving. You can listen to it while you're at home. And again, the Audible version will be available in multiple languages as well. The book will also be available English, French, and Arabic. So you can get it, the ebook online through Kindle, but you can also get the hard copy through Barnes and Nobles. And then once it's released, you can also get the hard copy on Amazon.
I'll be getting my copy.
English, French, and Arabic.
This should be in high schools, but we we know that's a struggle because you're dealing with the state. They're only going to tell a bit of our story.
I talk about too much controversial stuff. I talk about Toussaint. I talk about Dessalines. I talk about our leaders. I talk about Naomi. I talk about things that they don't teach. I talk a lot about Liberia.
You're in the right place. Right on the hour of power. Trust and believe.
So I don't think that they would want the students to learn this type of stuff.
No, not at all. Not at all. They're still teaching them that slavery was the beginning and the end of our history.
Yep.
That couldn't be anything further,
and that
from
slavery
the truth.
wasn't a bad thing. When I'm working with these students, I told you I was working with these students. One of the questions was, what was the worst part of slavery? It was a multiple choice question. The answers were that they didn't have any beds, that they had to work all day, and like some other two basically like normal things that people have to do. And the correct answer was that they didn't have beds to sleep in. And I was like, that was the worst part of slavery.
Wow.
That is what children are being taught to believe.
Not being robbed of your name, your culture, like Malcolm used to, teach us. The psychological part, scars go away, but the mental scars, we're still living with it.
Yeah,
He took our drums from us, took our music from us, took everything that we did to kind of like to cope.
Cultural genocide, and that's why I feel like the missionaries that helped my family escape Cameroon did not do so with kind intentions, because at the end of the day, they had objectives. My father lives in the same neighborhood as the president of Cameroon, so my family came from a place of political standing, of political power. The missionaries that helped my family escape Cameroon had something to benefit through those connections by, being well connected to politicians in Cameroon. They could build a church there. The Church of Latter-day Saints, the church that helped my family flee Cameroon, is the richest church in the world. Just Google it. So why are they so rich? Why they got missionaries all over the world? What are they doing? They're spreading the world of God, but does that include cultural genocide if you're erasing religions and histories that these indigenous people might have? That's the question. And I just want my readers to think about it. I don't give them the answer. I just give them the facts and ask them questions.
How do you deal with the claim that our African brothers and sisters sold us into slavery?
It's a lie. It's a lie. And the reason why I know it's a lie, because when I went to Cameroon as an 18-year-old, I was confused because there were parts I couldn't go to because I was black. I was like, wait, this is Cameroon. This is our country. It was segregated. Cameroon was still segregated. Cameroon was still segregated in the 2010s. It's segregated. I was like, they're like, you can't go to this resort because it's owned by the French. And they said no blacks allowed. I was like,
and it's modern day.
Yeah, this is modern day. What? This is modern day. I'm only 29. This is like 10 years ago. I was like, that's crazy. I was like, that is actually, I don't comprehend how I'm in a country of black people and I can't go somewhere because I'm black. And so knowing that, and then knowing that slavery still exists in Cameroon. There are people who work on essentially, chocolate plantations or chocolate farms where, they're picking cacao beans and selling them for pennies, and that's how they make their livelihood. But then you look at Hershey here in Pennsylvania. How much are they selling that chocolate for? So slavery still exists on the continent of Africa. It might have changed, but colonialism is very strong, very, very strong. And so saying that the Africans sold their brothers into slavery is a lie to try to divide us, because they were also experiencing colonialism on the continent of Africa in a different form, because it's it's a different environment and the circumstances are different, but also experiencing colonialism, slavery, and racism. It's never mentioned the Middle Eastern or the Arabic slave trade, that lasted again in Africa for over 1,000 years. Why isn't it? Because there was slavery happening on the continent of Africa, but no one wants to talk about it. People only want to talk about the transatlantic slave trade. And so I feel like it's a disingenuous lie to divide us, because slavery was happening on the continent of Africa. Colonialism and even neocolonialism, it has ravaged Africa to this day. You look at their infrastructure, they don't have basic infrastructure. The roads are brown. The roads are still dirt. They're not paved. I worked at a hospital there. no water, no running water at a hospital. Wow. Basic infrastructure. Right. So how were they the ones that sold you guys into slavery and they won for some reason, but they're still losing? That narrative doesn't make sense to me, in my opinion. I see the effects of neocolonialism. I see the literal segregation. And I'm like, there's no way y'all were selling people into slaves and y'all still lost. Like that, to me, that doesn't make sense.
Man, we gotta get you back on here another time. We need to talk about the cannabis testing and the hemp in the future. We're moving into a new paradigm right now, and this information is very, very, very timely. But we do got other things that we can delve in as well as how we make that jump into this new society that's coming in. So, wealth of knowledge right here. You got any socials you want to share with everybody? Anybody can follow you?
I'm on Instagram. I'm on Clubhouse. I believe I'm on. They changed the name of Twitter to X.
Yeah,
man. Elon
what name are you under? You under the Benbruno or the?
I'm under Mpodol Ion. Mpodolion at Mpodol.
Okay, I'll share that on there.
So that's my social for everything.
Well, this has been more than powerful. We definitely got to do a part 2 of this, God willing, as the year goes along. But we're going to continuously advertise your book. We're going to get one for ourselves. And this has been more than powerful. We can go on for days with this, but it just shows how much we need it and our people need it, especially here in America that's not connected to the motherland and their ancestry. We are so far behind, but when there's a will, there's a way.
Let's get there.
And we got to make a way.
Let's win. Let's figure out how we lost. Let's remember how we lost. Let's remember our history. We lost, and then let's come back. Let's get our get back.
Yeah.
Let's gang up. Get the get back. Once we know who we're gonna get it from, once we know where we're gonna get our reparations from, once we know what they owe us, let's get it back. Let's get organized.
Right.
Let's take it. Who's gonna stop us? This is America. This is where all the guns come from. Right? This is that's why I'm so grateful. I'm like, oh, I'm American. That's the country with the number 1 guns. Like, people are afraid. They fear America for their power. I'm like, why aren't the blacks capitalizing off of that and using that to take back what they have, what they're owed?
That's one thing that we speak about this program is for us to wake up from this trance that we've been inundated with. And so this is freedom time. Anybody can follow me on Facebook. Follow Shareef Hameed on Facebook as well. See the myriad of posts that actually speak to that. Yes, if you're listening right at home, you have a role to play. You have a duty to play in providing the necessary things for your human family. If you're above the age 30, you got something to teach these youth. Let's stop being scared of them. You see them go down the street, you get behind, you pull a little blind, and you peek out the door and you get on the phone. They need to hear from you. These are some of the most powerful souls. And probably some of the ancestors that did the wonderful works that they did probably reincarnated back at this particular time. And they have that power. They need that guidance. They need you. We all can do it together. We can't let our political whoever we vote into office or whoever we vote locally and nationally, they're not our saviors. We are the ones that are going to have to do the work, and we need everybody to put all hands on deck. So if you see ills in this community, ills in this world, it's up to you and I to do our due diligence and let's do something about it.
Yes. Let's try to make a family connection with our brothers and sisters from Africa and wherever. We need to make that connection other than just braiding hair and selling oils and incense and all that. We need to make a family connection. And it's on both of us. It's on our African brothers and sisters to embrace us and us to embrace them, especially with them just coming here, to America to make their home. We got to be family. Who else is going to be our family? Every other ethnic group understands family and they implement it, in their daily lives, not just for business and braiding hair and stuff. So
we're stronger together. We're stronger together.
Yes,
Let's get together.
No doubt. So thank you for tuning into the Hour of Power. This has been a very powerful show, and we look forward to bringing you back. And you're welcome to come back at any time.
I feel welcome. I love coming here. I'm like, oh my gosh, like thank you so much. I'm just so grateful.
Miss Brianna with the NAACP. She's a new team member with the NAACP, and she's doing a lot of positive things with the youth. So Miss Brianna Banks will be on, God willing, next week on the Hour of Power. So thank you for tuning in, and have a good night. Thank you. Peace and blessings.